දුර නොදුර කරනා එතෙර මෙතෙර වෙලෙනා පුබුදා නැන මනා යොදුන් යන මග විඩා නිවනා
විශ්වය සිසාරා විශ්වවාහිනී.
So far this morning, we have had two prominent persons from the community visiting our studios at Vishvavahini. We are privileged to have another renowned person in our community here this morning. Although he is known for his contribution in the field of arts and drama for decades, starting from Professor Sarachandra days, by profession he is an advocate and barrister who has worked in the capacity of a Crown Counsel both back in Sri Lanka as well as in Tasmania. That is the very reason why we have invited him today, this morning. That is, we heard that Professor Veeramantri, who has been a judge in the International Court of Justice, passed away a couple of days ago. Mr. Padmakuma Ediriweera has been a close associate with Professor Christy Veeramantri. Good morning, Kumar.
Good morning, Bandu. And it's a privilege to have been invited to say a few words about the passing away of Christopher Gregory Veeramantri, one of the greatest legal scholars and a jurist of international reputation, and in fact the greatest legal scholar and the jurist our Matrubhumi Sri Lanka has ever produced.
So Kumar, actually we will need a very elaborate and a longer program to celebrate
Comprehensive
the program at a later stage. But today,
life.
Now that we've learned about his death, so we'd like to talk a little bit about his contribution to our society at large, and in the international field as well. There's, Kumar, there's not many Sri Lankans who have achieved that international status.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so your association with him goes back a long way, right?
A very long way, yes. In fact, it goes back to the time that I never met him. When I joined the law college,
right,
he had just retired from the position of the lecturer of the Ceylon Law College.
right.
And at that time we had a lecturer in law of contract.
Right.
But we didn't very much care about his lectures.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, in circulation was his notes on the law of contract. That was the Bible which we studied for our law exams.
Right.
And for successive generations of law students, that was the Bible.
Okay.
Now, a word about Judge Veeramantri. He was educated in Colombo University and London University, and he was awarded a doctorate of laws by the University of London.
Right.
And he served as a lecturer in the Ceylon Law College, and also as the member of the Incorporated Council of Legal Education in Sri Lanka.
Right.
While he was a lecturer, he was appointed in 1967 as the judge of the Supreme Court. He was only 42 years. And that in the history of Sri Lankan judiciary. He was the youngest lawyer ever to be appointed to the celebrated and precious position of a Supreme Court judge.
Right. That was in Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka, yes. And those days when we were law students, when we heard that Judge Veeramantra is sitting on the bench, we used to go and see him on the bench. For more than any reason, he was the most beautiful human being I have met in my life. She's so dignified, so pleasant, and he has a wonderful Rupagaya. We want to see him. That's why we did. Then, of course, later on, we became very closely associated with him when we came to Melbourne.
Yeah.
In 1972,
That is as a professor of law at Monash University, is that right?
yeah, he served in Sri Lanka in 1972. In 1972, he was appointed an emeritus professor of law by the one of the most distinguished, prestigious universities in the world, Monash University. And the contribution he made while he was there is quite enormous. I shall, if I find time, I may say a few words later. And then while he was in the Monash University, holding this professorship, he was privileged to be honored. One of the greatest things that could happen to any legal scholar in the world, any jurist in the world, and that was to be appointed as a judge of the International Court of Justice, the World Court in Hague.
Yeah, if I interrupt you for a brief
Yes,
moment.
welcome.
Actually, he was instrumental in writing the constitution for Papua New Guinea and in some other islands around Australia.
Yes.
He was sort of considered an authority on state constitutions, right?
He was an authority, not only he was an authority in all aspects of law.
Right.
Domestic law, international law, human rights, rule of law. The books he has written are enormous. And in fact, if one has the opportunity, go through any of his memoirs, entitled so meaningfully, Towards One World.
Yes.
And the first volume dealt with Sri Lankan days, his young days, all his life in Sri Lanka. The second volume dealt with
Australian
days.
So the reason why I know that is, Kumar, because I was instrumental in organizing the launch of those two books here in Melbourne.
Correct.
One at Box Hill Town Hall and the other one at Monash.
Yeah, in fact, you were privileged to be associated with the launch of the first memoir, and I was privileged to be invited to speak on that.
Yes.
And with another professor of law in Melbourne University. And that, I think, was a great privilege for me.
Yeah, actually,
to be involved.
If we go beyond the sphere of legal aspects, as you quite rightly mentioned, he was a beautiful human being.
Yeah.
I think he was the president of the legal association working against or to eradicate nuclear arms.
Yeah, that's only one, Bandu. There are so many volumes and so many treatises he has written. Right. And they are enormous. That's what I suggested. If you are interested in anything about the rule of law, human rights, nuclear, proliferation, things like that, all that is there in these wonderful volumes. The third volume of memoirs, say Towards One World, speaks about the days in the United Nations. At the Hague, in the World Court. So,
and he was very keen in protection of the environment too.
yeah, environment. He talking. I mean, in the first volume, he speaks about the irrigation culture of Sri Lanka. And he's an authority in so many things about religions, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Confucianism.
Yes.
All that is there in his wonderful volumes.
Yeah. Kumar, just to, touch on what you said, that I am also privileged to have had a chance to associate with him. That was when he was the professor of law at Monash University. That is early 80s. That's the time the ethnic problem escalated in Sri Lanka.
Correct.
At that time, he formed an association called OSLONO, which stands for Overseas Sri Lankan Association for National Unity.
National Unity.
That consisted of, people from all other communities, Tamil, Burgher, Muslim, and so on. He was trying to bring about this national unity through that organization, and may I say, he did succeed to a certain extent, but the events went beyond.
Yes, I'm aware of that one. It was wonderful. He has been a very interesting thing, which I always know. In my review of his first volume, my last word was that he was a man of the world.
Yes.
And above all, he is a Sri Lankan.
Yeah.
About whom we can be justly proud. And the greatest Sri Lankan jurist, legal man our history has ever produced.
Absolutely.
And one other thing I should say, that I was invited in 97, by the South African government to be a visiting lecturer at the, I'm not quite sure of the name of the university, South African University. He was at that time the professor in
Actually, he was a visiting professor at Harvard University.
Harvard and so many universities.
So many, Tokyo, and Canada and so on.
America, Canada, all sorts of universities he was there.
Basically, as you said, you can't find many Sri Lankan-born people rising to that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So the stature of the man requires a very elaborate discussion program to celebrate what he has done to the mankind.
Absolutely, Bandu. But what I was trying to say was that this was the high time of apartheid in South Africa.
Yes.
And he was invited to be a professor, although at Stellenbosch University, if I pronounce it correct. Then when he consented to accept the appointment, he was told that you have to come at honorary South African.
Right.
Then he said no. He said, I am a Sri Lankan. I have a Sri Lankan passport. If you accept my Sri Lankan passport, I'll be quite happy to come there and accept your appointment.
Yeah.
We went there, we spent a number of as a lecturer. Then at that time he noticed the sufferings that the Africans went through the apartheid. And he wrote a book when he returned from South Africa, The Closing Days of Apartheid. It was banned in South Africa, but secretly it was printed 3 times in South Africa and distributed. And that became one of the instruments of the cessation or challenge to apartheid in South Africa. And he was instrumental in that. And he said, and that's why I started Sri Lanka Bhimanya.
Yes.
And he was always Sri Lanka Bhimanya. When he spent with us about 10 years ago, more than about 15 years ago with us in Hobart as our honored guest, he used to relate those stories. I was so impressed with this judge, this man of international, standing. Still he calls his motherland as his mother Lanka.
Yes.
And he still has this passport, Sri Lankan passport, wherever he travels.
And
that is Veera monthly.
Yeah. So one of the things he told me over a casual dinner was that when he was visiting South Africa, in the application form at the airport, you have to write what race.
Correct.
He told me that one of the famous cricket commentators, John Arlott, when he went there, so he left it blank, and the immigration officer said, no, you can't leave it blank, you have to write whether you're white or black. He said, and he took it and he wrote human. If you want, you can take me in. Otherwise, you can find another commentator.
That's it. That's exactly what he was. He was so proud of the fact that he is a Sri Lankan. And Bandu, after he returned, I couldn't say much about when he was appointed. His appointment to the International Court of Justice has to be approved by the General Assembly of the United Nations and also the Security Council. It was that kind of caliber that this man was, right? And after joining, there were 15 judges. 15 judges comprised the International Court of Justice.
Wasn't he appointed the vice president?
He was appointed, after his appointment as a judge, very soon, he was appointed the vice president of the World Court. And in no time, he also had to act as the president of the World Court.
Right.
And the amazing writings he did during that time, it's sort of I cannot say how wonderful they were, you see. And then when he retired from the World Court in 2000, I think it's 2000, he came back to Sri Lanka, and he was sharing his life in Sri Lanka, and he started
charitable foundation in Sri Lanka.
He started the Sri Lanka Veera Center for Peace and Research in Colombo, and it's quite a huge organization, I heard, and to contribution that he made to the mankind, as well as the world peace and the rule of law, he continued at this center in Colombo. Most of his life he spent in Colombo.
So Kumar, taking all that his contribution to mankind and considering the stature of the man, we will, at a later stage, we will compile a good story as a tribute to his life.
That's right, Bandu. That's what I also intend to. Thank you very much for that beautiful idea. And we'll try to make a presentation celebrating his life.
Yes.
Celebrating his life. And for the time being, yes. Thank you.
Okay, so at short notice, thank you for coming to the studios. And we will meet again sometime.
Yes, thank you.
दूर नो दूर करना हे तेरा में तेरा वेलेना उबुदा नैन मना युद्धुम यन मग विडा निवना
विश्वय सिसारा विश्ववाहिनी